We can't afford that, like, absolutely.
Already terribly constrained.
Even from the top of the flies backstage, you can tell that the 363rd performance of Puccini's Tosca at Covent Garden is reaching its climax.
Presto su, Mario, Mario, su, presto andiamo, su, su, Mario,
This is one of the classic moments of grand opera. Discovering that her lover has been killed, Tosca commits suicide by leaping off the battlements of the Castel Sant'Angelo.
Big step.
Hardly has Tosca landed before the stagehands go into action for tomorrow morning's rehearsal. This season there are 7 new opera productions and 13 revivals. All of them must be scheduled to fit in with performances by the Royal Ballet. The Opera House stage is rarely set for long. Popular operas like Tosca bring in the crowds and the money, but the house needs to have a mixture of the traditional and the adventurous. The man with the tricky job of balancing money and art for the Royal Opera is the newly appointed director, Nicholas Payne. This morning, money is uppermost in his mind.
Oh, it's sort of Star Chamber time, isn't it? They're going to try and cut another £1 million out of my budget.
What are you going to say?
Oh, Mutt and Jeff, I think. I mean, I'll smile and be nice when they think I'm going to be difficult, and go stubborn when I think I need to. The whole thing is a game of poker. It depends which of us loses our nerve first. They always, one of the tricks is they always try and table something at the last minute, which is not quite what you're expecting. But I'm getting used to that. The most important element of this is coffee. And it's on occasions like this where I wish I hadn't given up smoking.
You take your coffee with you, do you?
Yeah, I don't trust them in there. I think they're probably going to put bromide in it.
As usual, cuts are in the air. Nicholas Payne is bracing himself to meet the finance department. General Director Jeremy Isaacs, in the chair, wants to encourage his new man, but also balance the books.
Are we looking at something that you haven't yet trimmed down, as it were, of your own judgment, or are we looking at something that you already have slimmed a bit?
Oh, it's been slimmed in a number of ways. Last summer, we took, what, the best part of £1 million off it? 900 and something.
Well, it's sort of gone up and down a bit, yes. You certainly improved the box office.
I mean, I think, Jeremy, to cut a long story short, On this summary sheet, I think on the fixed costs, we've done what you could reasonably expect of us in reducing them by 5%. On the rep-related costs, we've obviously not done enough.
Have you any sense of a global concession that could be made?
I think I could find you 100,000, but not 200,000. Look, I mean, of course, I mean, Dennis is right. Most of it is not committed. On the other hand, we're not going to cancel AIDA, are we?
There was a quite serious artistic suggestion made, Nicholas, which does actually antedate your time, but it derives from the huge success of the Chippendales here recently, which Gillian went to see, I have to say, more than once. And we did discuss with Anita Mashinsky the question of doing Aida as if the Chippendales were playing a major role in it. That would save a fair bit on costumes, wouldn't it?
You have to pay actors more if they take the knickers off, you know. Really?
The director of the Royal Opera is necessarily part bureaucrat and part impresario. Nicholas Payne wants to bring on radical young directors and designers without alienating the audience. He has to plan 5 years ahead while keeping tabs on the 20 productions scheduled for this year. He was recruited from Opera North, where he put the company on the map with some innovative and provocative productions. The revival of Sir Harrison Birtwhistle's opera Gawain is now in rehearsal. It doesn't have Tosca's popular appeal. Its music has sparked a fierce media row, with a group of young fogies threatening to disrupt the opening night. They're protesting that traditional values are being overwhelmed by music like this. Birtwistle himself is here to check the score. Come the first night, the traditionalists are out in force.
Long live harmony!
Heckle for harmony! Heckle for harmony!
Decency and morality in music! Harmony! Tunes!
The future is romantic! Down with modernity! Down with modernism! Give us a tune!
The music may be modern, but the story's based on the ancient legend of Gawain and the Green Knight. At the theatrical climax, the Green Knight's head is chopped off and goes on singing. The bass baritone who plays the Green Knight is now singing from the wings. Beside him, the stage manager uses spitting image technology to synchronize the living voice with the puppet's eyes and mouth.
Does what music used to do, which is speak to the world. It's self-denying music.
Of course it speaks to the world. How could that not speak? That deals with the same themes as music is dealt with. For its whole life, it's just not tonal.
It denies,
you just want nice chords.
It denies itself the ability to speak
very
to the world.
Very backward-looking in reaction.
It denies itself the ability to just say only the simple thing.
There is a complacent establishment.
In the media.
There is no real criticism or originality.
Of course there is.
It's modern music without opposition. It's like governing without opposition. It's dangerous.
It's fascism.
Yes, it's dangerous.
The whole thing
is
fascism.
You are calling this fascism.
It's
There is a tyranny of taste in this country.
Why don't
there is not a voice of opposition.
We are offering the new art. We are the way forward. We are the revolution.
Perhaps helped by the row, Gawain does unexpectedly well at the box office, but it was planned by Nicholas Payne's predecessor. His own judgment will be tested later in the year with a new production of Wagner's Ring Cycle, a huge enterprise for any opera house. He's hired a director and designer who are new to the house and known for their controversial work. So it's doubly important to keep music director Bernard Haitink alongside.
The finance department are after the Ring. Even the way we're doing it, which must be the most economical, conceivable way to plan a Ring, is of course more expensive than doing wall-to-wall Tosca.
Oh no.
And the designs are overdue.
We must see things now. I must have an idea what he is up to. I have to insist. So ask Betty to arrange
I
anything.
think they must come in and show you something.
Yes, that would be very helpful if you could be there.
December. I don't think you're going to get a model then.
No.
I will now go and put some pressure on them.
Yes,
to do that. And I think I'm going to have to be a little bit fierce about design dates.
Yeah, you have to.
Otherwise, as you say, we're in a pistol to the head situation.
The orchestra has great respect for Haitink, but he only conducts a few productions a year. Other conductors are not always so welcome.
Let me tell you about conductors. In the world, there are two sorts of conductors. There are the great ones like Toscanini and Tommy. Now, Beecham was still alive, and my friend was working in the Royal Philharmonic with him at that time. So now they are great artists, nice men, wonderful human beings, and their only wish in this life is to help you to play well and fulfill yourself as an artist. All the others are bastards, and they'll bugger you about. Now, that just about sums up the orchestra's attitude to the conducting trade. But of course, they're not all bastards. They're all perfectly reasonable people. But they feel like bastards when they're up there messing you about.
We know exactly what the problem has been, that the conductor has been a total disaster, and the orchestra's done its utmost to get the thing together. It's not
standard of this all the time.
The orchestra committee meets Nicholas Payne for the first time. He allows them to let off steam about one or two conductors with whom they're less than happy.
Yeah, music, and you're right to smell a rat in what...
I mean, day to day, it's this. It's not the period instruments. It's day to day is this. We have to somehow. We know we can't have the great people every night of the week. We can't afford it, and you're not going to get them anyway. But how do we manage to get great people and first class, but try not to go into the bottom of the dustbin?
Well, I mean, I think
they go down. And you don't have any enthusiasm to come in here to do the job, because you know you're playing to the best of your ability, and you've got somebody up there that's doing their best to destroy it. They don't realise they're doing it, but they're not. But
I mean, you're right to bring it round to that again. But that actually does also bring it round to the kind of programme you're able to put on, because the best conductors aren't just going to come because they want to do a series of routine Toscas, are they?
The orchestra leads a strange subterranean life. It plays 6 nights a week for both opera and ballet, with a different conductor for each production. There are 124 permanent members and, though highly rated by the critics, they sometimes feel undervalued by the opera house management. Since nothing can happen without them, they're a force to be reckoned with. 5 years ago, they refused to work normally and closed the house down for 2 weeks. Since then, relations have improved, but they can still make life awkward for Nicholas Payne and his producers. Tonight's show is the first of an unusually long run of 14 performances of Mozart's Magic Flute. This quirky production has been brought in from Scottish opera as a cheaper option than building a brand new production, but it's a risky strategy. 60 permanent members of the chorus. They have no say in what they sing, in what they wear, or indeed in what they have to do.
We might as well get some continental crap that we could...
Make it
that we haven't... that nobody else has
make
seen.
it original opera house crap, rather than bringing somebody else's crap. That's what should be. That's the last.
The magic flute is not doing well. The opera board holds a post-mortem.
The flute, Nicholas ingeniously borrowed from Glasgow, a flute which was hugely admired there, and which did not translate as well to this house as we had hoped and he had hoped it would.
These last few months have not exactly been the Royal Opera's finest hour. And you know the context, but at the risk of being boring, I will repeat it, that in order to make the 93-94 budget balance, we had, as usual, to make certain cuts. The result, therefore, was a bit of a artistic hodgepodge. In both cases, you may well have other criticisms of both shows, which I can either answer or agree with. But I think it does demonstrate that financial cuts do affect artists, and you can't just sort of brush it away. On the other hand, if we'd not taken out that Igor, we'd have been £500,000 in the red. Absolutely.
Another night, another show. The rather more traditional production of Wagner's 5.5-hour marathon, The Mastersingers of Nuremberg, turns out to be a critical triumph and a box office sellout. A key ingredient in its success is the conducting of Bernhard Haitink. With the applause for the Mastersingers still ringing in his ears, Bernhard Haitink must turn his attention to an even bigger Wagner enterprise, the Ring Cycle. There's now a model of the first set, though it's unfinished. With the director and designer away, Nicholas Payne has to use all his diplomacy to persuade Haitink to go along with the somewhat irreverent new approach. It features, among other things, naked Rhine maidens, aeroplanes, and a collapsible car.
What can I say? I mean,
if you remember, what he was anxious to establish was the image in that first interlude of time passing.
Yes.
And air, space.
Yes. The problem with all these things is, I asked him, do you think the audience will understand that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, few will, but many will not.
And that's a thing which I do not like. I mean, we should not be too arrogant, and we should not take things for granted. And even for me, at first viewing now, it is difficult to understand what he wants with it. But now, when you explain it to me, okay, that's the problem. Where's the borderline? Where do you draw the line that you say...
Perhaps I should just talk about whether they've thought of alternative images or whatever.
I think this is the thing. I mean, like the car image. I mean,
I'm not happy with it, of course not. But maybe I'm too old-fashioned. God knows.
Well, look, I mean, there are a number of things. You can't challenge every single image that's put forward and hope to have a happy result.
No.
It may be one should major on the car, which is something that we're all very unhappy about.
Yes.
And concede in other areas.
You can't ignore everything Wagner asks for. It will end that I will not play the music because they don't think the music is interesting anymore.
Do it all on one evening.
Yes.
A Ring Digest.
Electronic tape.
Yes.
Yeah. That was on the other side before. But
Bernard will take a very great deal of persuading that motor cars and aeroplanes have got anything to do, as he was saying the other day, with the Ring.
Yes, I mean, the most annoying thing about it is, and I mean, you know, of course that's a problem, and either you can persuade him or Richard should make an adaptation or something. I don't object to aeroplanes, but they need to be seen within a context, don't they? I think the delay and, you know, the missing of certain meetings has created an unease and lack of trust, hasn't it? That's the worst. However, I shall see Bernard tomorrow and try to sort of reassure him that we've got the situation under control.
In the last resort, if you and I are persuaded that the thing is right and should have our confidence and will work, Bernard will go along with it. But, you know, he needs and is entitled to the reassurance, you know, that he's dealing with something which has real value, that's all.
Quite agree.
There's a stage rehearsal with piano in the auditorium, so today the orchestra's squeezed into the aptly named Crush Bar. They're working on a new production of a little-known 19th century French opera by Massenet called Cherubin. It's the first production for which Nicholas Payne is entirely responsible.
Forte and piano, maximum contrast. 20, allegro moderato.
In the model room, the curtain is going up on another little drama. The director of Cherubin, Tim Albury, is working for the first time at the Opera House and has to present his concept to a tough audience, the various heads of the production departments and the general director, Jeremy Isaacs. He and his designer, Anthony MacDonald, have taken a few liberties.
So the first scene is a chorus scene between the servants and the philosophe. The opera is, of course, set in the 18th century because it is a continuation of Marriage of Figaro. And we're going for a sort of Gallic version of Spain in the 18th century. Is that right, Anthony?
That's absolutely.
Our influences have been sort of Dufy and people like that. So it will be 18th century, but in a sort of Rococo manner with modernist touches, anything you like to look. I think we'll just go as we go along and see how we get on. So let us imagine that the house curtain goes out to reveal the kitchens of Cherubin's house, which, of course, are in the bowels of the institution.
1 before 4, 1.
The conductor for Cherubin is the distinguished Russian, Gennady Rostostvensky. The orchestra admires him. They like his relaxed approach.
Even here was a perfect acoustic. It was mezzo piano, but not piano. Please, piano, piano. You have mezzo piano? Mezzo piano. It's the worst dynamic in the world, because nobody knows what's it. Is it bad piano or bad forte? 1 bar before 4. Mezzo forte is much better than mezzo piano, because somebody understands what's it. 1 bar.
these are the chefs and the chefesses in Cherubin's household.
Yes, and they're off-white. They're in off-white. But they've probably got pink faces because they work, you know, it's very hot in the kitchen.
Very steamy and hot, so they have very pink faces.
And they've got marigold gloves for doing the washing up.
Do all the chefesses have moustaches?
They do, yes. Don't you find they always do?
So one possibility is that several of the plates or piles of the plates are actually up here and are reached down from above by the danseuses, chefesses, who are on the table. So they'd be played by dancers as opposed to chorus, because they obviously couldn't sing like that. So if you imagine, what I'm thinking we see is this half of dancers' bodies are above, taking plates and passing down, and probably also doing dancer-like things on the table. So it's a little choreography for leg and plate. So I hope it can be light, I hope it can be pastiche 18th century with a flavour of the turn of the century in the costumes, and yet it's also kind of modern in another way, and its overall aesthetic is probably contemporary, you know, so it isn't just an homage to the past.
I'm still looking for economies of, you know, something like 2.5 million in...
This is the company as a whole,
the house as a whole, 3 companies as a whole, yeah. I would, you know, and certainly, one way or another, there will have to be a turnaround in the opera company's budget, something of the order of 600,000 or 700,000.
Most of these operas in the schedule are paying for their dinner. I mean, of course, Gawain isn't, but we have rather, I had thought, cleverly surrounded it with high earners. And to have an April to July entirely made up of overpriced Italian opera with overage stars is not really the way we should be.
No, certainly not. Please not. You'll get no support from
We can give you a support under that. A little sausage.
That would be a good idea. I need something.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
you know, for a bit of,
rest.
you know, yes.
Yes.
We'll put a little sausage
Lift and tilt.
The concept for Cherubin has been agreed.
I need a bit of Gossard Wonderbra effect, you know. Yes. Up and under, you know.
We'll be doing that.
The designers on hand to give support at a costume fitting for one of the chorus. The next challenge is to marry the design and production ideas with the conductor's interpretation of the music.
And you get towels too. They'll be black then.
Oh,
and
right. Very nice.
Yes, and there'll be some like a choke.
Cherubin's first stage rehearsal. Rostysvensky, relaxed as ever, is on the podium. The orchestra may love him, but he and the director have not been in harmony.
Every rehearsal period for a new production is, in a way, a tournament or a battlefield between the musical and dramatic elements. That's what opera's about.
And so it proved to be. At a weekend rehearsal, director Tim Albury and conductor Gennady Rostysvensky had a row, and the conductor walked out. A new one had to be found at once, and the incident explained to Opera Board Chairman Sir James Spooner.
Tim refused to apologise. Was that the sort of flouncing out? What actually happened?
I could have got him back.
Right.
I didn't want him back.
I see, right.
He would have wrecked the show. Look,
Tim and Anthony said he was a lazy worker.
He is an important international conductor, and the reason I got him in, and it's my misjudgment for a probably inappropriate show, was that I felt it was very important for the orchestra to work with a major international conductor. Now, as it happens, and I'm not even criticizing Rozhdestvensky. The way he imagined that opera was a sort of more expansive, sentimental vision of the thing, heavier, more ponderous, than the show that the producer and cast had been rehearsing in the rehearsal room. And because of his not always presence in the rehearsal room, that came to a head too late to mend. On a few occasions I tried to pull it together, but it became plain to me that actually it wasn't going to come together, and we were heading for disaster.
Nicholas would like to say a few words.
Nicholas Payne. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you all know this, but I feel I owe you a word. You probably by now know that Gennady Rozhdestvensky... You probably by now know that Gennady Rozhdestvensky has decided to withdraw from this production of Cherubin for artistic reasons that we were unable to resolve over the weekend, despite considerable efforts. I'm of course sorry that he's left us, and it was done with sadness rather than acrimony, and I hope we may get him back in the not-too-distant future for another project. I would also like to say that I am incredibly grateful that Mario Bernardi, who is one of the very few people in the world who has conducted this opera before, has literally flown to our rescue from Canada. And
when he got the call in Toronto on Sunday evening, Mario Bernardi had exactly 65 minutes to catch the only plane that would get him to Covent Garden in time for the next rehearsal. In the rush, he packed only one shoe. Bernardi is one of just 3 conductors in the world familiar with this score, but he's never conducted at the Royal Opera House before.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here, but I could think of happier or easier circumstances because we can't do very much about that. As you heard, I did conduct a piece, but that was 5 years ago, and I was only able to look at the score again for the first time in that period of time yesterday afternoon. Even more bewildering is the fact that, of course, I have no idea how you learned the piece, how you rehearsed it. Time, of course, is rather short, but I think with some patience, forbearance, and a bit of luck, I think we should be able to work things out in the next few days. Thank you very much. We'll go from the top, please. About 1/4 as much, just, little crickets, rather than very little. Right, 16, please. 1, 2, 3.
Tim Albury and the star of the show, Susan Graham, like what they hear.
Hope springs eternal.
Do you have a fermata before the second beat? It was taken out? Okay. No, as long as I know. Yeah, no, let's do it exactly in tempo.
first big test is the cook's chorus, complete with rubber gloves and china plates.
Polish, look, polish, look, polish, look, polish, pass, polish, pass, polish, pass, polish, pass, polish, pass, polish, pass, polish, pass,
Directors have to justify their existence, don't they? You know, the designers. I'm not being funny, but, well...
How often have you had to wear a moustache?
This is the first time, and it itches. And if it brings me out in a rash, I'm going to have some different glow. I look like my granddad. He was killed in the First World War, you see, and I've seen photographs of him, and I thought, yeah, I see it now.
And the gloves?
I spend most of my life in rubber gloves, though. It's nothing different, you know. Peeling potatoes, cleaning, dusting, always rubber gloves on.
This is the first act. And I gather that at the second act I'll wash all this off, if it'll ever come off. And then I put on a blue face, I think. I can't put the blue over this because it'll turn it into a delicate shade of magenta. With large black eyes, strong eyebrows and purple lips for the next bit. So, there we are.
The Wizard of Oz.
At the end of the 3-hour rehearsal, Tim Aubrey can at last talk to his new conductor.
If you want to do some things, you know, or if you have notes for me, this would be the time to give me the notes.
I'll have a look in my notebook, can I?
Okay.
There were very few things. There were just a couple of times when I thought the volume was a bit high, a couple of times. Actually, particularly, the time when I was most feeling like, is this too loud, was really in that whole sort of opening section of the Manolas and Officers. All that. Again, all the sort of recity stuff around there just felt a little bit dominated, I felt.
Well, give me the specific places now, you know. Maybe I have a...
But it was great. Really exciting.
Thank you.
See you later.
Which way do I get to my...
Gennady Rozhdestvensky's sudden departure has further repercussions. The Director of Public Affairs seems to have criticised the conductor's musical interpretation to a newspaper. The orchestra is furious.
I know a lot of the artistic side were quite upset by some of the press comments. Personally, I know the orchestra felt that Tim Aubrey should have apologised to him. I mean, and feel that the producers, you know, yes, they have their place and everything like that, but they seem to be coming out on top, and the musical director perhaps should be, especially when he's as great as Rozhdestvensky is.
Keith did a very good job at dampening down a particularly difficult journalist. Unfortunately, she put together one or two comments and it came out as Massenet dressed up as Mahler. Is that fair?
I mean, a 40-minute
Which was a
conversation
most unfortunate.
in 110 words. I mean, I think that the fact that nothing happened after that should be a demonstration that we did our job as Helen and I did our job as well as we could do in the circumstances. No, it was an unfortunate sort of juxtaposition of words. I did say them. I didn't say them in the same sentence. No.
I mean, what was said was that the words were taken out of context.
Yes, I'm sure they were. But the word was there, wasn't it?
And the orchestra director wants a better explanation from press officer Helen Anderson.
I wasn't obviously present at the conversation.
It was certainly a mistaken thing to say.
It was a very long, I think the telephone call took about 40-45 minutes, so...
It doesn't take 40 minutes to say there were irreconcilable artistic differences, does it? I think there's about a 10-second soundbite to this.
That was what caused the questions, because, of course, that's one of the oldest...
Like being indisposed, you mean?
Yes.
Well, there you are.
So...
but some questions not better not asked. I mean, this is far better.
And I've said all along, I'm not going to move unless everything's there,
Keith Cooper is now waiting to see Jeremy Isaacs. Ticket sales for Cherubin are disappointing.
Different machines.
Ironically, the problem appears to be a lack of press coverage.
Morning. We were going to have some. John?
All right.
Anything urgent? No.
Not enough has been done to sell this unknown opera to the general public, and his own department is to blame.
There's, I think, a difficult situation developing between Helen Anderson and me. Clearly, our style of dealing with press is very different. Her notion of how a press office should behave is very different too. I mean, she is not a proactive press person in the same way as Amanda is. And we have some problems. I mean, we have Cherubin, which has very little coverage at the moment.
Well, of course, events have provided some possible press interest.
Well, I'd be quite happy to fuel those, for God's sake, and Nicholas would too. I mean, I don't think we need to be quite so careful and, pussyfooting around. I don't think that's... I mean, sensitivity towards the artists involved is of a concern. But, no, let's try and exploit this guy who was... if there's anything we can do on some chap who's coming back to London, then let's do it. He's 60-odd. He's going to be able to cope with a bit of publicity. There's a wonderful range if you wanted to. And the fact that we open it on Valentine's Day and it has all of that sort of... one can be quite larky with it too. It's not a piece that you need to be particularly precious about.
Is there no feature material but this weekend on Cherubin?
No.
That's ridiculous. That's very poor.
Cherubin is a tale of young love, and Nicholas Payne has chosen Valentine's Day for the opening. Tonight the house is almost full, but the rest of the run looks thin. Good reviews could make all the difference. Mario Bernardi makes his way to the pit. Cherubin is, for the Opera House, relatively cheap. £150,000 on sets and costumes, £260,000 on artists' fees and related costs. But for Nicholas Payne, there's more than money at stake. It's a risky first production, and since he chose the director, the designer, the conductor, and the conductor's replacement, his own reputation is on the line. At the interval, suffering from first-night nerves, he's reluctant to follow his guests, Lord and Lady Harwood, and make polite conversation with the crowd invited for drinks with the general director.
Fucking rah-rah, I'm going to face this. I don't get to escape. You're really nervous about your first night.
Are you?
Always, yes. I was always sick in the pit of my stomach, can't eat or anything. Thought of having to make conversation with people is just too ghastly.
So are you expected in there?
I can't go and cruise downstairs.
No, we've done our stint.
haven't we? More than our stint.
What do you think of the production?
Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is
I
very
think
active
it's
beginners. You call Miss Graham.
sort of glorified pantomime, really. We're the ugly sisters. And they're the ugly servants.
I would have thought there were one or two other matinees to do before this, quite frankly, wouldn't you? Well, I think I would have done Don Quixote, for instance.
It's funny, we thought about
Did
that.
you? Yeah. And
Well, I think
singers
no,
maybe.
I think it's a superior piece.
Yes. What do you think this is? A superior? Oh, fair enough.
I find Quixote sort of old man's doodlings.
Yes, yeah.
Of course it is!
Do you find people are flirtatious here?
Flirtatious? They're disgusting.
There's nothing romantic about Covent Garden. The romance is for the customers. It can be an unrealistic place. I know that at least one famous conductor insists on going home on the tube from here because he says it's a fantasy world, opera. It's important to remind ourselves how the rest of the world actually lives at the end of the day. Good idea, that. Yeah.
I thought the whole evening one of pure unadulterated pleasure. Cherubin is not great art, it isn't important, but my goodness, it's fun. What Celtics? I don't know. Because it's an unknown piece, it could do with the lift of a little clutch of good reviews. Maybe even one sensationally bad review would help too. Still, that'll do for starters. I'll wait till I get into the office to see what the rest say. Too mean to buy more than one paper.
Nearly all the reviews were enthusiastic, but Cherubin did not do well at the box office. Nicholas Payne needs something far more substantial to establish himself at Covent Garden. Before he gets to the Ring Cycle, his next big production is Aida. The two previous Covent Garden productions of Verdi's Great War Horse were artistic disasters. The house badly needs to get it right this time.